Hi guys, this is Mark. In this lecture, we'll be talking about debugging, which is the process of finding bugs in your logic in your application and eliminating them. In the world of code, when you use a programming language, the process of debugging is rather straightforward. It could be complex as far as finding the bug, but the actual process of injecting yourself into the code and just seeing how the code executes and stepping line by line is very straightforward. But what do you do if there is no code, if it is codeless? It is definitely a challenge. And by using the codeless approach, where the blocks already have the functionality and they have been tested individually and in groups, the likelihood of bugs is fairly low, but it still exists. Of course, there could be bugs in logic, which is perhaps the most important thing that you would be looking for in order to eliminate bugs. The mechanisms for finding bugs, as far as the actual techniques, there are not that many. The most common one that we use internally and we recommend, and that's what I will be describing in this lecture, is essentially just logging. Of course, there are different ways to do logging, and we have a lecture, I believe, on logging. If not, we'll definitely add one. But the process of logging would be fairly straightforward, where you essentially just print out the state of your application at any point of time. And that's exactly what I will show you today. We used logging in a way in a special kind of way in previous lectures, where we created the playground just to visualize the logging, and it's definitely a viable alternative, but it sort of impacts the layout of your UI because there is a separate panel that contains logs. It's definitely possible to do something very similar without impacting your UI. And that's exactly what we'll be looking into. So now let's jump into UI Builder and just see how debugging, or to be precise, logging of the state of your application and your logic would work with Codeless and UI Builder. Back in UI Builder, I'd like to use the page we created in the lecture on error handling. And in here, we use the playground page, which uses the logging panel to display any logging information. Normally, in your application, you wouldn't have something like this. This was created simply just to be able to easily get to any logging information, just to see what's going on in the app. So for the sake of this demo, to give you an idea how you can get that additional information from what's going on inside of the app, let's get rid of this panel and modify this app so it works exactly the same. It generates an error, and we can get all the information about what's going on, but using a different mechanism. To do this, we will go directly to the logic that exists in this app, which is in the Generate an Error button, click Handler. Go to Logic, and this is our onClick event. So in here, we had this log message function, which takes page data and just channels this information into that log panel, which we got rid of. So this will be the essence of this exercise, is just to see what other mechanism exists in UI Builder to provide that level of logging. And it is actually very simple. It is as simple as using one block. The way I find this block is I type in on this add block drop down, which is quite useful. You can actually do, rather than searching in here, you can use the search to search the block that you need using this one. So if you go in here and type in the word print, you will see this text print, and this is exactly the guy. Let me see where it is located in the menu. I assume it would be in text, maybe. Yes, it is in text, so you can see print is right here. But I find this to be a faster way to do it. So let's substitute all the log messages with this print, and then just move these texts that we were printing inside of the print block. So let me add two more. One will go in here, and copy this guy and make these changes. So this could be deleted. Looks a lot more compact. Now, the question is, where will this print go? And when you run a web application built with UI Builder, it will actually go directly into the developer console. And let me demonstrate what this would look like. Let's rerun this page. Generate error. So all of that, all of those things happened, and the question is, where does it go? So if you are in Chrome and you do right click, and I'm sure there is a keyboard shortcut, if you do right click and this panel opens up, which you can resize and go to console. And in here, you can actually see all these log messages. So as you can see, we have an error has occurred, which displays this thing, and then we are in finally. So all of that information is available to you right from Developer Console. And this console that lets you output anything you need is available in all browsers. However, getting to that console will vary from browser to browser. So if you're using Firefox or Safari or whatever the latest browser from Microsoft is, just Google and see how to get to Developer Console to see this output. As you can see, it is as simple as using this print block. Are there any other mechanisms, if you ask me, to get to actual debugging? Well, other mechanisms are available, but they would require understanding of the code, because here, whenever you use Codeless, of course, it results in some code that is being generated. So if you understand this code, you could get to that code right at the JS level. So here, as you can see, I navigated to the actual code that is generated by UI Builder. And what you see right here is essentially the code that corresponds to this Codeless logic. So you could start debugging this code and setting the breakpoints and executing line by line, but this once again requires the knowledge of JavaScript in this case and understanding how to do it. If you don't know programming language and you would like to go 100% codeless, then the print block is the way to do it. Once you do it, just rely on the console that exists here, and that tends to be a fairly reliable and productive way, as rudimentary as it seems. So that's pretty much it as far as just grabbing this information. Oh, one more thing that I would like to do is I wanted to show you a page that I created, and this one is actually bubble sort. And let me just run it first and just demonstrate where that print block may need to be used whenever you do something that is more complex. So in here, in this page, what it does, it generates, I think, 20 random numbers, and then these numbers are visualized with blocks where the width of that block represents the actual value. You click Start Bubble Sort, and it's very quickly just sorts all of these values in an ascending order. So in here, this bubble sort contains this logic, and for instance, if you want to, and then if you're not familiar with bubble sort, it basically goes through the entire collection of numbers and then compares any two that are sitting next to each other, and if one is greater than the other, they're being swapped. So in here, you could easily add a print statement just right at the time when they're being swapped, and add just a log message. Right here, and with the text that says, now swapping two numbers. And in here we could just log the previous value, which is a variable, with the current value, just so they're not sticking to each other in a log message. We can do something like this. So now if I rerun this page and open the console log window right here, so whenever I click Start Bubble Sort, as you can see, we're getting all this logging information for when this program ran, and it just tells you exactly how all that swapping has occurred. So this is a kind of a real world, it's not really real world, very few people do bubble sorts, but in case if you need to do something that is more or less real to an application, this is a good example of how this print block could be used. That's it, guys, as far as debugging and logging to console. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this useful, and as always, happy codeless coding.